Hello people, welcome to another episode of the video series where we learn Kotlin following along the Codecademy's Learn Kotlin learning track. In the last video, we went over the data types and variables and specifically using number variables lesson. And now we're moving towards a new unit and a new lesson, which is conditional expressions. Let's get started. What is conditionals? What is this topic, conditionals? Let's read along. When we go on adventures, sometimes the road is straightforward, and other times the road splits, and we must choose a path to take. Conditionals are like the forks in the road. They determine the direction our program takes. A conditional is an expression that evaluates true or false values in order to control the flow of code in a program. When we discussed Kotlin in terms of the order of execution, we stated that Kotlin code is compiled and executed in top-down order. This remains true. However, a conditional statement can be used to determine what instructions are executed and what instructions are ignored. So, to comment on this, let's say when we write a code, the compiler goes from the beginning, the top, and goes to down and read one line of code and execute that line of code. This is the general flow of code execution. However, we can change this and we can make the program decide on some criteria so that the code of execution follows different paths. So in this unit and in this lesson, we're going to focus on that. Let's take a look at the instructions. It says Cody, which is our mascot here, is going to Dev City, but on the way, Cody must pass through Conditional Creek, where there are many river paths that each lead to a different location. In order to prevent travelers from getting lost, they are given colored pattern sails that'll help them navigate to their destination. So it is like here you can see the diagonal stripes, and since Cody has the same pattern, he follows this path. So let's go ahead and see some real examples. I like the way that Codecademy is full of animations, art, and stories. But at the end of the day, we need to understand this part, the coding part. So let's say we have a variable, raining, and it has true as its value. And if we use this kind of an if expression, if raining, then println bring an umbrella, we can determine whether or not to execute this code, so that whether or not to print this bring an umbrella phrase to the console or to the terminal. So let's take a look at the syntax of this expression. It starts with the word if, and then we have after a space, not a required space but an optional space, but I recommend putting that. And after that we have a pair of parentheses, and inside there is a Boolean expression, an expression that will evaluate it into true or false, okay? A conditional inside. And then there is a block here, block of code. A block of code means a pair of curly brackets, and inside there are some lines of code. In this case, it's just one line of code. And this statement works like this. It checks the condition inside, and if it's true, then it prints, it executes this line of code, which is inside of the body of this expression. So this is called the body of the if expression, and this is called the condition. Okay, it tells you the same. The expression starts with a keyword if. A pair of parentheses contains a condition that evaluates to either true or false. And following the condition, there is a pair of brackets, curly brackets, that holds a block of code. The code contained within the code block of the if expression will only execute if the condition is true. Otherwise, that code block will simply be ignored. When we run the program here, we get the following output: bring an umbrella. The value of raining inside of the if expression here is true. Therefore, the instruction println gets executed. Okay, so knowing that, let's try to go over the first task of ours. Your neighbor keeps forgetting what day the garbage gets picked up. Strange. But yeah, possible. You decide to create a small program to remind them when to take their garbage out. Create an if expression. Okay, let me pause here. Create an if expression. When you want to create an if expression, you write if, and then a pair of parentheses, and then a pair of curly brackets. And then I pressed enter or return to create this line so that it looks good. And then I will place condition here, and then I will place the code here to be executed if the condition is true. Okay, create an if expression. We already did. That checks means decides on some condition. If the value of is Tuesday is true. So if we place is Tuesday here, since it's a Boolean and it can evaluate into true or false, this is a valid way of feeding our if expression a condition. Then, inside the if expression here, create a println statement, println, and then it should output take out the trash. So I'm going to copy this and paste it, and running this will output take out the trash because it's Tuesday is true. If it was false, then running this code won't produce anything, any output, because this line will simply be ignored by the program and skipped. So this if condition gets executed as a block, and if this is true, then our computer executes this line, and if it's not, then it skips executing this line. This is a basic decision making formula when writing some Kotlin code. In the next lesson or next section, Codecademy talks about if-else expression. Now we can define another block of code whenever the block of code in if does not work or not executed. So in the example, it says is herbivore, meaning that it's being fed by herbs. Then the diet is vegetables, and else the diet is meat. And then println this animal can eat diet. Okay, so this is a string template. So this diet here, since it's preceded by a $, it'll print out the value of this diet variable. Okay, and the diet variable is either vegetables if this is true, or if it's not, then the code in this else block is executed, so it'll be changed to meat. Cool. Let's read here. The else expression is not followed by a condition. Yes, since it'll only run code if the if expression's condition is false. So if this part is skipped, then this part is run. If this part is run, then this part is skipped. Okay, it's like a two-way fork and two different branches on a road. When you pick one, you cannot go the other. Cool. This expression is always placed as the last conditional and cannot exist without an accompanying if expression, and this makes total sense. So we cannot just write else something something because it doesn't mean anything without the if statement. Instructions: create an if expression. When I hear this, I write this, okay, with a space here. Sorry if I missed in the previous task. Then it should check the value of sale happening. Sale happening is a boolean, so I can write here directly because the condition we write between these parentheses should be a boolean or a boolean expression that should eventually be evaluated into either true or false. Inside the if expression, set the value of price to 12. So inside the if expressions is this line actually. So the price should be 12. Okay, let's run this. There are some warnings, but it's not important. We passed this task. And then now it wants us to create an else expression underneath the if expression that sets the value of price to 15. So what we do here is we come here, okay? This is the matching curly bracket of if's body. And after that, I put a space and then write else and then another space and then another pair of curly brackets. And inside, I write price equals 15. So this will assign 15 inside price. Or if the line 7 works, then computer will assign 12 into the price variable. Let's run this and pass this example. Cool. Now it says outside of the conditional expression, okay, outside the whole if else expression, use println and add a string template to output the following statement. Okay, so println, the total is something something dollars. The total is price dollars. This price is here, and with the dollar sign I can inject this integer into this string. Okay, this is a string because it's enclosed by double quotes. Cool, let's run this. And it says the total is $15. Then it means this line worked and executed, and that means sale happening is false, and that was actually what it was. So if I change this to true, then running this app, not the app, running the script will now print the total is $12. Okay, so just by changing this true or false, we can determine the final price we charge our customers for some theoretical, hypothetical product. Cool. Now the comparison operators. Comparison, this is actually very handy thing. When you want to compare some variable's value with some others, then we can use this comparison operators. Let's read what Codecademy has to say us. To create more complex conditions for our conditionals to evaluate, we can use comparison operators. Comparison operators evaluate the relationship between two values in order to return an expression as true or false. So, as you might remember, we just said a minute or 2 minutes ago, inside the if parentheses here, in place of the condition, we should place a boolean, which will eventually evaluate it into true or false, or we can place a boolean expression, which again evaluates into true or false. Now, with the comparison operators, we can do the same. For example, here, username.length is less than 10 can evaluate into true or false according to the length of the username. Here, the username is 6-character string, so this will be true because 6 is less than 10. Okay? So it talks about some comparison operators we can use in Kotlin, and that is less than, greater than or equal to, and lastly, less than or equal to. Let's go ahead and check these examples. Username, we already know this example. If it is less than 10, if the username.length, as you might remember, again, length was a property of strings. See, this is a string because there are double quotes enclosing this. So using the length property after putting this dot with the dot syntax, we could reach the length, how many characters does the string have numerically. We can reach to this property. And here it is 6, and since 6 is less than 10, then this evaluates into true, and if true means computer will run this code. For the greater than operator, if the value on the left hand side of the greater than symbol is larger than the value on the right, the expression returns true. The same logic, now it checks if it's greater than 25, and this is greater than 25. There is also less than or equal to, which checks if it's less than or equal to, and in either case it'll return true, not return, it'll evaluate into true, and else if this condition is false, then here the code and else block will be executed. The greater than or equal to operator does the same, and it checks if it's greater or if it's equal to the value on the right side. Cool. Let's go ahead and complete this. Dungeons and Dragons is a role-playing game that uses dice to determine the success of a player's action. Okay. Create an if expression that checks if the value of D20, the dice, which represents a 20-sided pair of dice, okay, is greater than or equal to 17. Inside the if expression, create a println statement that outputs the incantation works and the dragon is defeated. Cool. Let's create an if expression. If, and this if expression, I don't know if it has an else statement, not yet. So it should check the D20, and it'll check if this D20 is greater than or equal to 17. So greater than or equal to 17. Don't forget to put these spaces to comply with the conventions, code conventions of Kotlin. Cool. So if this is so, d20 is greater than 17, then we need to print out this println okay, here like this. Let me move this a little bit so that it fits one line. Okay, let's run this. As you can see, there is no output because d20 was 13 and 13 is not greater than or equal to 17. It is less than 17. So this didn't work. And next, we need to create an else expression here that'll print this output. Okay, let's run this. And now you can see that the println statement in else block is run and executed. So we see this, the incantation fails and dragon wins phrase in our console. Okay. So there are more operators that'll be evaluated into true or false. For example, equality and inequality operators. These work the same way, but it checks if the value on left is equal to value on right. Okay? So these can be variables, or these can be some complex expressions. For example, here it first calculates the modulus of these two, and this will be evaluated into an integer, and then it checks if this integer is not equal to this one. So here equality is checked by equals equals, whereas not equal or inequality is checked with an exclamation mark and an equal sign. So here, listen to me very carefully. I'm gonna tell you something which is really important. Most of the beginners, like I met lots of people and I studied with lots of beginners, and most of them is somehow getting confused by equals and equals equals. Okay, sometimes they just write equals in an if statement. This is a common mistake, so I'm warning you. Equals is for assignment. It means get the value on the right hand side. This can be a value, this can be an expression, a literal, a variable, but get the eventual evaluated value of this and put it to the variable on the left hand side of this equal sign. But equals equals is a totally different thing. It's not for assignment, it is for equality check. So what it does is it checks if this and that is equal, and if yes, the whole expression returned into true. If no, the whole expression is evaluated into false. So if you go ahead and write here an equal sign, you'll get a syntax error, whereas if you go here and then write equals equals, then you'll get another syntax error. Okay, this is the difference between one equal sign and two equal sign. They are totally different. The only common thing they have is actually the equal sign used when representing these operators. Cool. So we learned equals equals is for equality check, and exclamation mark equals is for inequality check. Let's create an if expression now. It should check the value of num1 is even. Okay. Is even means remainder when this number is okay. So to check if this is even or not, there is a trick, mathematical one. You just apply modulus to this with 2, and if the remainder when dividing by 2 is 0, see how I use the equality here, then num1 is even. But if it's not, if the remainder is 1, then num1 should be odd, okay? So to check if something is even or not, you can first use the modulus operator with 2, so you get num1 mod 2, and check if this result is equal with 0. If it's 0, it means num1 can be divided by 2 without any remainder, and it means this is an even number. So we need to print this num1 is even. Since num1 is 8, this should print 8 is even. There's a warning, but not important. We will get rid of this in a second. Create a second if expression. A second if expression is a separate expression. So I create another if, and it should check if this num2 variable is odd. And it says use inequality check. So what I'm gonna do is num2 mod 2 is not equal to 0. Okay, I could use equal to 1, but since Codecademy wants me to use this new operator I learned, I will use that one. And if it's so, I'm gonna write num2 is odd. Let's run. And yes, we passed this exercise as well. Let's go to the next exercise. Now, this exercise shows us chaining if-else statements more than once, so that we get a fork of not 2, but 3 or 4 or 5 possible branches. For example, here, this is the if-else we just learned, and it creates 2 different branches. But now, if we combine if-else statements like so, now we can create more than 2 possible branches. So the syntax is easy. You come to this point, and after writing an else, instead of creating this code block, you place another if with condition and place a full if-else expression again, like so. Okay, you can see that like this if-else is similar to this if-else. Okay, they repeat itself. It repeats itself. Cool. You'll get used to the syntax. You need to do some exercise. Maybe like if after writing like 5-10 if-else statements, then the syntax will stick to your mind. So let's examine how this works. Temperature, temp is 60, and computer first checks if 60 is greater than 65, and it is not. Since it is not greater than 65, it doesn't execute this line of code, and it jumps to the next check, and then checks this if it's greater than 45. And yes, it is greater than 45. then it executes this line of code and skips the rest. So if else statements cannot be executed, so the possible branches of an if else chain like this cannot be executed simultaneously. Either the first one is executed, or the next one is executed, or the next one is executed. And it starts from top and comes like this from top to down. Cool. Let's now apply this information. The local coffee shop started a rewards program based on the amount of coffee customer buys. Use your knowledge of conditionals to create a program that determines what kind of a member a customer is based on the amount of rewards point they have. Okay, we have some reward points and we want to determine this member type string according to that, and we're gonna use some if else chain. If rewards point, I'm gonna copy this because I will need it, is greater than or equal to 50, then member type should be platinum. Else, if rewards point is greater than or equal to 25, then member type should be gold. Else, if rewards point is greater than or equal to 10, then member type should be silver. And lastly, as the last possible branch, else we need to set the member type to bronze. So this line of code will get executed if none of the above is executed. And do not forget to put spaces. And cool, let's run this now. Yeah, looks like you have an error. Double check your syntax. It says there is a syntax error. Let's see what is wrong. Instead of typing rewards points, I kept repeating rewards point. That was the reason. So I'm gonna copy and paste the correct spelling and run again. And now we passed this first checkpoint, and now it says outside of the conditional expressions, use println to print this string. You are a member type member. Again, this $sign used with a variable name injects that variable name into a string, injects that variable's value, into a string. Cool. Next exercise. Logical operators. Okay. I think this lesson is a bit too long, and we already spent a lot of time on this. So let's stop here and continue in the next episode, where we complete logical operators, order of evaluation, nested conditionals, when expression, range, and the review. So basically the next half of conditional expressions. See you in the next episode.